Let's just click today. So today I have one broad objective. I want to provide one broad observation. I have a few concerns based off of that observation, and then I want to provide 10 suggestions for emerging scholars that are interested in educational innovation. So my objective is sort of interesting. I want to answer a previous question today. I want to take some time, and that's sort of the point of this talk. And that question came up just on Wednesday. So on Wednesday, I presented to a group of faculty, and I left those faculty with one question for discussion. Okay? So after my presentation, I asked the faculty and I told them that we're probably going to have to rethink leadership and property and expression, privacy and due process and policy, which means we probably have to rethink schooling, and that probably means that we're going to have to rethink learning. And all of that leads me to the question of who will do this. And that's what I left the faculty with on Wednesday. But I won't leave you hanging. I'll try to provide an answer. So that is the end of my objective. Now let me provide an observation that is broad, and it's multiple observations in one, but I want to keep this reasonably under control. I've provided lots of other observations, if you're interested, in previous PowerPoints, lectures, all of which I've taped, and you can find online. So this is my observation. I actually want to start it and let Jean Wilhoit do the summary here. Jean Wilhoit presented in Centre College about a month and a half ago, and he had 3 broad points. So his first point that he wanted to make was globalization has changed our economy. The second point that he made was technology has changed our tools. And the third point that he made was demographics have changed our institutions. All of these points I agree with, and all of them I could spend 30 minutes talking about, but the one I want to focus on today is the one about technology. So let me tell you a quick story, and this is a story that is somewhat personal to me. So the best video that I know of for summarizing what's happening in the world about globalization, technology, and demographic shifts is a video called Did You Know? And there's actually multiple Did You Knows. This is Did You Know 2.0. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a fantastic video, and I recommend after this session you go and Google it. I won't bother playing it here. But what I want to point out to you that's part of my story is this number over there. 4.1 million views of this particular video on YouTube. Altogether, the Did You Know series has over 30 million views on YouTube. Now, that's an interesting number because let me tell you the story of this video. This is a guy named Carl Fish. Carl Fish is a friend of mine. His parents live here in Lexington. He's a teacher, though, at Arapahoe High School in Denver, in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. He's just he does a little bit of technology and helps out with their technology around the school. He was asked to give a presentation to just a group of his colleagues, just a few teachers in a teacher's lounge or so, about why it's important to recognize the changes that are happening. And so what Carl did was put together a short little PowerPoint about some big facts that are happening in this country that are changing the way we do business. Carl, being a technologist, decided to put that slide deck, those PowerPoint slides, up on his blog, which is a mildly popular blog out there. He could use, just knowing him, he could use to do with a little graphic help, just saying. Anyway, another person out in the blogosphere stumbled across this set of slides. And this is a fellow named Scott McCloud. He's at Iowa State University. And he's a good friend of mine as well. But what Scott did was said, these are some interesting slides. Do you mind if I remix these and put these up on the web? And so they did. And shortly thereafter, they had quite a few hits. They thought, well, maybe it's worth getting a little help, making this look a little nicer. And so for free, they got a little design firm to design up components of it, and they put that up as well. And so actually the most popular version is still that first version. It has something like 6 million hits or so. But nevertheless, these things started rolling out on YouTube, and something really interesting happened. There started to be a whole lot of copies of this presentation, this Did You Know set of PowerPoints. So this is a copy by Amy Beth Hale, just a pure copy. Pure, nothing has changed. But that she is putting it out there wanting to share with her friends. And that got 10 million hits on YouTube. Then other weird things started to happen, like the concept started to be remixed. And so the way that the presentation was done started to be used in other areas. So here we can see, did you know facts about President Obama? Kind of component. Then comedies picked it up from the people that brought you Obama Girl. Do you remember Obama Girl? This is a web comedy group that made a comedy remix of it. Then other countries got on board. So like this is the United Kingdom version of the Did You Know PowerPoints. Then what we would consider big players got involved. Sony, BMG, decided that they would like a version for one of their meetings of their corporate board. And then The Economist magazine called us up, called up Castle, the group that we work with in Iowa State, and asked us to do a version for them. And so, what's happening here? Can I remind you, this is a teacher and a professor. These are not traditional voices. These are new voices. So that's the end of my story. I want to come back to that story later, and I think it helps set up what I want to explain that emerging scholars can do. But before we get there, we need to just quickly reflect on some of the changes that have happened with information in particular. So I first have to understand what the change is that happened to information. I feel like I have to set up the previous information paradigm. And so this is an awesome technology that we call paper. Paper historically has taken on different forms. So this is paper just in a different form, papyrus. Before that, we did paper that was sort of parchment. Anyway, the fundamental idea here, writing on some surface, really hasn't changed all that much since that time. So you can see that we wrote symbols on a physical surface, thereby retaining the idea contained in those symbols for later accessibility. And so the kind of technology that paper is really is still building on this initial concept. We've just been improving on the mechanism. Nevertheless, this was a revolution. Okay, in human history, it goes far back, and I won't say that I have any knowledge about it whatsoever, but the fact that we could retain information beyond our own physical bodies, this is something that is unique to humans. Then we decided we could make that information mobile, right? And when you can make information mobile, that's a revolution. So on goat skins like this one, we wrote down stuff, we would carry it around all over the Middle East and wherever we were. And information was preserved and shared, and it was quite useful, but the production capacity of that was very low. You had to kill something in order to generate the actual physical surface on which you contain the information. So the Egyptians improved on that substantially by going with this thing called paper, which they made out of weeds just there in the Nile River Delta, as well as papyrus. So the production capacity of this is much, much, much higher information to be shared much more widely, and the kinds of things that we could keep greatly expanded. That was the dominant paradigm, still is, sort of today. We did have one big improvement on the paradigm, and this is the printing press, which sort of spawned the Industrial Revolution, in which obviously we took the production capacity of paper to a level that none of us thought would have been possible before that. And we built great monuments to this particular revolution. This is one of them. This is the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., the world's largest library. So this is one of the great crowning achievements of the last information paradigm. All right? But what I want to share with you is things are changing very, very rapidly because of our new information world. What we did was took information that used to be contained in physical spaces, be it cave walls, or papyrus, or paper, and we liberated it from that physical space. Now, we still need physical components, right? But how we access that information and how far we can share that information is at a new level. Something we've never done before. So this is our latest information revolution. And to give you some sense, I know the UK faculty are tired of hearing me say this one, but just to give some sense of what this change means is roughly, who knows, we can't calculate it for sure, but scientists estimate that there's something like 70 exabytes of information going to be produced this year alone. Okay, so since the founding of the internet, we're into the hundreds and getting into the thousands of exabytes, which is petabytes. I don't even know where we go after that. They're making it up as they go. So 70 exabytes is larger than the Library of Congress. In fact, it's a lot larger than the Library of Congress. 518,000 times the Library of Congress. The information contained in the Library of Congress will be produced this year online. This information is in the form of pictures and video and data streaming from satellites. It's what you take your camera phone when you take a picture or when you text somebody. All that information gets processed into ones and zeros, and all that information is just contained within this large space of how we now share information. Now, 0.01% of all this new information is going to be replicated on paper. So this is a big deal. When we detach information from physical space, a lot of really new and interesting things are possible. Meaning that there are no more walls. So what does that mean for us in everyday life? These things have changed. We have adapted. But when we take a second to think about it, there's been some very big changes happening. So you all recognize this. This is a card catalog. This is the University of Michigan's card catalog. I couldn't find ours. Anyway, we had to contain information. We had to store it in walls, in little spaces, on little cards. And you had to go to that physical spot in order to find that information. So what happens when you don't need the physical space anymore? That happens. That's new. This is different. There's no walls here. You just search, and the whole world of information is accessible. This applies to all kinds of paradigms. We remember these times. We remember that. That's not that long ago when we did film, right? We don't do film anymore. Nowadays, this is what we do. Flip cams, HD quality cameras. Where's mine? Here it is in my pocket. I keep it with me. HD quality video in this pack. Better than Hollywood has done for years and years and years and years and years. When we were growing up, the video that this thing takes would have been amazing. And so other paradigms, we had to type little beeps on wires that we would send across the Atlantic and stuff like that. We got a little better with this kind of communication technology. When we varied the electric signal that would come out of the speaker, it would interpret a variable electrical signal and But still, the electrical signal was varying, and you had to have some connection so you could see the little plug. But when you make that information into ones and zeros, you can liberate it substantially. And we don't really even need the wires, and the amount of information that we can process with these are something else. I could go through a bunch. Maps. We don't do those maps anymore. Encyclopedias, obviously, we use these, and on, right? Just, there you go. We've changed our society a lot in a very, very short period of time. Right? We buy and sell stuff, we put our videos, we share pictures, there's some more buying and selling locally. Travel agents, any of you consult travel agents lately? No, travel agents are out of business for the most part. So we've made a lot of changes when you can liberate information from physical spaces. Lots of people get to participate now in this new regime, including teachers and professors. So this is the end of my observation, and like I said, if you want more, I'm happy to point you to more. There's dozens and dozens of fantastic books that I can point your direction. But now let me address a few concerns that I have because of these massive changes. My first concern. So all of this new stuff we're doing on the web, we want learning now. So here's the way that kids think. Everything is on the web, and the web is useful for everything. So everything should include learning. Now, schooling, of course, is not equal to learning, and learning is not necessarily equal to schooling, and that's actually a pretty good thing, because a whole lot of learning is already happening on the web. But what are schools known for with the web? They block it. So most of the world's new information is digital. Our analog schools necessarily become more detached from learning. It's sort of a big problem. You can get anybody to say it. This is one guy that has said it that we all sort of know and respect. Bill Gates, even, let's jump down, by obsolete time in our high schools, even when they're working as design, cannot teach all of our students what they need to know today. And this is what we see as the fundamental problem here. We designed our schools in the 1900s when we built this American education system. We built it for an economy based on agriculture and labor. But that's not the economy we have anymore. We now have a creative and service class economy. And yet we still teach children in rows, like it's a factory. Why? We have to answer these kinds of questions. So here's my second concern, and this concern has to do with gaps that I see existing. I don't want to spend a lot of time, but this is some of the latest data that came out. And I just want you to get a general sense over the next few slides that there are gaps out there. And so you can see the dark shaded area here. This is all adult internet usage. And then teens are the black line above that. So you can see there's a gap between those, but maybe that gap doesn't concern you that much. Let me show you some different gaps. So this is going online wirelessly by group. So there's gaps in how young adults and adults go online, how physically we accomplish accessing the internet. MP3 player ownership, same kind of trend. This is social networking. You can see a pretty large gap there. Twitter, other status updating services, game console ownership. This is always a fascinating one to me. 97% are playing computer games, and 50% played them yesterday. And another gap that I don't want to go in great detail, but I want to make sure that we recognize is the gap that may be beginning to widen based on demographic characteristics. So this is wireless access by household income, and you can see the numbers there. So these gaps concern me. Why do they concern me? Well, because it's this group that are making the rules for us, and it is this group to whom those rules apply. So kids come in digitally ready to go. They're ready to learn all the world's information packaged on the internet and other places. But when they get to school, that's not what they're getting. And I think a large part of it has to do with some of these demographic characteristics that are breaking down here. You've heard the digital natives and the digital immigrants kind of terminology. I don't love that terminology, but there's components of it that I think may have some value. And so let me get back to this slide in a few minutes. Okay. Last thing I want to point out is I think there are systemic restraints. Our system is working against the potential leaders, and this is problematic, I think. All of these are examples of great new technologies that have been developed in the past 15 years or so. And you can see the characteristics that go with them. The latest one, Twitter, this guy's an NYU dropout. His latest little product, I shouldn't jump off, but I will on this one. His latest product is using your iPhone. You plug in a little adapter, and it can process cell phone, or it can process credit card entries. So you can buy and sell stuff literally anywhere via credit cards. Anyway, latest little invention from this guy. But what concerns me is these are all kids and not Americans. And they're outsiders to the system. Why? Because the system is not good at building innovators. Insiders are frequently not innovators. So there are systemic restraints on innovation. They look like this, and a school board, and like this. And that's okay. Bureaucracies are meant to be restrictive. That's why we build them in the first place. We write all the laws as restrictions. Obviously, the banks would love for us to get rid of a bunch of laws right now. Because our system of schooling is based on laws, schooling necessarily has heavy restrictive components, and democracy itself is restrictive. But we can change democracies. We know we can. We've done it before. This guy helped, and this is what he had to say about changing a democracy. And so democratic innovation is possible, but it's dependent on leaders. So when we look at our schools, who is the leader? Usually this person. That person gets to wield a lot of control over the system. You can control the budget, the personnel, the assignments, the facilities, time, discipline, curriculum, evaluations, and policy itself, meaning that they can control change. So if the leaders don't get it, it's not going to happen. But our leaders are restricted. And so the situation we find ourselves in are that the people in charge of leading us into the 21st century are the ones that are least knowledgeable about it. So that's the end of my concerns. Let me move now to a summary where I'll answer the question that I posed and talk about some suggestions. So based on this kind of change that's happening in our world, we're going to need to rethink leadership and property and expression and privacy, due process, policy itself, schooling, and of course, learning. So who will do this? Well, what I'm proposing is that you will. Critically, here's where I think we can make some progress. Remember this slide. These are those who make the rules and those to whom the rules apply, but what about this middle group, this 81% of adults, 30 to 49? I think they're the folks that can help us bridge the gap here. They're the folks that sort of grew up with the internet and sort of didn't grow up with the internet. They sort of understand the old regime, and they sort of understand the new regime. So I think this is a critical group for us to help bridge the gap. You see, I'm an optimist. Folks at UK question that. But I fundamentally think we can change the system. Now, people will disagree with me on that. Even good friends of mine like Scott McCloud, who did the Did You Know video, disagrees. He thinks that our system has to break down before we can fix it. But I do not. I think we can fix the system. We have changed the system many, many times in the past. But we are going to need a bunch of leaders to help us do that. And thus, it's up to you. So the system is calling that, democracy itself is calling you. Will you answer? So let's consider the alternative. What happens if not? Well, I promise you that the lawyers will make decisions. I promise. I know them. I am one. Their job in society is to make decisions when nobody else will. Now, I know that we all have issues, so here is my plea. Please help stop the lawyers. We need your voice. If we don't have it, they will just make it up as they go. And I've proven to you through our story that you can get your voice out there. This is a teacher and a professor. Those of you in this room, you're going to probably be one or the other. And so I know that it's possible. So let me provide you with some suggestions on how to go about changing the system. Number one, you're going to need a lot of passion for this topic, for any topic. I don't care what topic. I was walking around the hallways today and saw passionate people working on issues that were important to them. You can't lose that passion. And a great example of passion, if you ever need a passion refresher, I encourage you to go check out this guy. Any of you recognize him? Okay, that's okay. So you can go to winelibrarytv.com, and this is a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. He is passionate about wine, and I don't understand how someone can be passionate about wine, but this guy is. He has built his passion for wine into a multi-million-dollar empire. He's written books about it. He's on the Today Show from time to time. Conan O'Brien is a good friend of his. All built off of a passion for wine. A passion for not just keeping wine to himself, but sharing wine across some new mediums. And so if you ever need a passion refresher, I suggest him. Second thing you're going to need is confidence. Now, I have too much of that, probably. I mean, I'm sure that's what my UK colleagues would say. But I feel that too many of my colleagues do not have the confidence needed to make real changes to the system. What we need here is somebody that's willing to take the 20-foot jump. The third tip I want to provide out there, a suggestion, is not to scare people. As a person that works with lawyers frequently, it does help if you don't scare them like this. So my friend Ellen in the front hall, this is a result of a Skype conversation, but she found it interesting, so I thought I would include it. So we were Skyping back and forth, and she's like, I need to run home and get a tie. And she asked why. And I'm like, well, if I don't scare them with my clothes, they're less likely to be scared by my ideas. So ties are important, or dressing formally is important. I hate that. I don't like it. I love to wear jeans every day. But we need to be able to access the system, and the system wears ties. For better or worse. I'm sorry. The fourth suggestion I have is you need to amplify your learning. You need to turn the tools of the internet towards your own learning. And so I put this picture up here, not because every time that I have a spare moment, like almost every single time, I always have my little iPod Touch in my headphones. Here I have podcasts, I have audiobooks, I tune into iTunes U. I've taken the amount of books that I can read per year from something around like 15 or so to like 50. 50 technical kinds of books, not novels, academic, technical kinds of books. Because I just listen to it in my spare time. And so I encourage you to find ways to amplify your learning, because you have to really know a lot when you're walking into these rooms. My fifth suggestion is to write a lot. And the great thing is that with the internet, there are new opportunities for writing that never existed before that you can tap into. So I'll throw up a couple of personal examples on the next one. This is a blog that I started 6 years ago, I think, called The Ed Jurist. Anyway, I wrote for 3 years and nobody read anything, like ever. Nobody ever commented. It was sort of got on my nerves. But I was writing, and I kept writing. And it was the practice of writing, the constancy of it, putting my voice out there, knowing that when I write something, potentially anyone in the world can find it. And just this morning, I didn't put up my picture of my latest post, but my latest post is about babies. And so one of the top folks in my field, in education law, that's what I'm supposed to be doing, wrote me an email and said congratulations and how much that he enjoys reading the blog. And so I spent a lot of time writing for no one. But that gave me the skill and the technical know-how to now write for a lot of people. So write a lot. Also, you need to translate research and you need to make it pretty. Now, this is a controversial one to be sure. My dissertation committee, I think, was fairly random because I had so much color in my dissertation. They didn't know what to do with it. They were just like, why is it so colorful? I'm like, well, because I want them to read it. I don't want them to look at it as this 200 and whatever page document, black and white text. So one really easy way to do this is just throwing your research, every time getting in the habit of throwing your research into like one-page fast facts or white papers that you can then circulate across the state. Policymakers love this, love it. And what I've found is generally if they find this interesting enough, they'll go get the research that they need to make an argument. But what they're not going to do, what they are absolutely never going to do, is just start searching through the journals on their own. Policymakers do not have time for that. You have to get the information into their hands. It's your responsibility. Don't just write the research and just think that, somehow someone will find this important research. It's your responsibility. And please, use color. My seventh suggestion is to find and build networks. There's lots of ways for doing this. This is one that I use, Twitter. But networks exist all over the place. This conference today is a network. I hope that you met some folks from other universities that might share some similar interests. Network with them. I mean, that sounds very business-oriented, right? Network with, got to be out there networking. But it's all about knowing the right people because people make decisions. And people out there making decisions will someday call on you for advice. Are you reading my tweet? I hope there's nothing too bad on there. I just took the top few. Okay, good. My eighth suggestion is to spread the word. So this is a new show that we're doing at the P20 lab called LabGap. Because all these technologies are available at your fingertips, the ability for you to produce high-quality content has never, ever, ever been easier. And I promise that there's like 4 graduate students walking around each of your campuses that know all there is to know about putting up videos and stuff like that. Find those people. If you can't find those people, learn it on your own. Just Google how to make a web video. Click enter, read, and then you can do it. But there's so many tools out there for you to help spread your word about your issue that you're passionate about. I hope you find a way to tap into some of those opportunities. My 9th one is sort of in line here. When you feel comfortable and confident and you have some data, please engage the policymakers. It's absolutely true that we do lack information to adequately inform policy. I don't think that people understand this, but most of the time, state policy, especially state policy, gets made pretty much without any research base whatsoever. And that's actually very problematic. Because, again, like I told you earlier, if you all don't help, the lawyers will make a decision, and they will make that decision without any research-based evidence. So please inform the policymakers. My last one, failure is an option, but only if you are persistent, meaning try again and again. So I want to leave you today with America's most famous educator in his words. If we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we'll rob them of tomorrow. And that's it. So, questions? Be my pleasure. Yeah.